You know, when you picture a hacker, what do you see? Probably some complex green code scrolling down a dark screen, right? But what if I told you that the first, and maybe the most critical step in a hack, involves no code at all? Welcome to the world of reconnaissance. This is where the real digital investigation begins. Just think about that for a second. We're going to treat this whole thing like a digital detective case. The website is our target, and our mission? Uncover its secrets using nothing but information that's already out there for anyone to see. And trust me, you're going to be surprised by what we find. So, the answer to that question lies in the very first phase of any hack. Before a single malicious program is even considered, a smart attacker acts way more like a detective, just carefully watching, listening, and gathering intel. It's called reconnaissance, or, just information gathering. The goal here isn't to break in, not yet anyway. The real goal is to map out the entire territory, to understand the target from the inside out. Every little piece of info we gather here is a potential clue, a clue that could lead to a major weakness down the line. Now, a digital detective has two main ways of going about this, two main approaches for gathering these clues. You can think of them as the two paths: active and passive reconnaissance. So, active reconnaissance means you're directly poking and prodding the target's systems. It's kind of noisy and it definitely leaves a trail. Passive reconnaissance, though, that's the sneaky stuff. It's all about gathering intel from a distance, using sources that are already public. You leave zero trace. And for our investigation, we're going to stick entirely to that stealthy, passive route. Every detective needs a toolkit, right? Well, ours is filled with tools that are surprisingly powerful, super simple to use, and best of all, they're free and available to literally anyone on the internet. Our first tool is the Who Is lookup. It's one of the oldest and simplest tools on the entire internet, and its job is to answer one very basic question: who owns and runs this website? This table here, it's just a tiny fraction of what a Who Is lookup can tell you. You can see the site's age, its digital address or IP, and that expires on date. That's super important, and we'll circle back to it later. But for now, the most interesting clue here is the hosting type: shared. That one little word tells us something huge about our target's home. So what's the difference? Well, a dedicated server is like a single family home for a website. It's all theirs. But a shared server, that's like an apartment building with lots of different websites all living at the same digital address. And just like in a real apartment building, a security problem in one unit could very easily affect everybody else. And that leads us perfectly to our second tool. If a WHOS lookup tells us our target lives in a shared apartment building, the reverse IP lookup gives us a list of all their neighbors. And this is exactly why this all matters. An attacker might not even go after your site directly. They could find a vulnerability in a less secure neighbor, maybe that personalblog.net site, to get onto the server. And from there, they could potentially attack every other site in the building, including yours. Okay, so now we know where the website lives and who its neighbors are. Our next tool lets us pop the hood and look at the engine. Wobbleizer is basically a mechanic for websites. It tells you exactly what parts and technologies it's built with. Now, it's not just the technologies themselves that matter, it's those specific version numbers. That PHP version 5.6.40, wow, that's a major red flag. A quick search will tell you it's years out of date, which means it has a long public list of known security vulnerabilities. For an attacker, this isn't just a clue anymore, it's practically a wide open door. So let's recap. We've got a list of neighbors and a rundown of some seriously old software. Each piece of information on its own might seem kind of harmless, but what happens when we start connecting these dots? Well, that's when a very clear picture of vulnerability starts to emerge. $12. What on earth could that possibly have to do with hacking? No, really, this actually happened. A security researcher, using a simple whois lookup just like we did, was monitoring Google's domain. He noticed the expires on date had passed. They had accidentally let it lapse. And for one brief minute, he was able to buy google.com for $12. It's the ultimate proof that even the smallest, most public detail can have absolutely massive consequences. And while that's a pretty extreme example, it perfectly highlights the power of reconnaissance. It shows how these seemingly insignificant public details can be pieced together to create a full-blown roadmap for an attack. An expired domain from Whois. Outdated software from Wobbleizer. A vulnerable neighbor from a reverse IP lookup. Each clue, found legally and publicly, becomes another stepping stone. A skilled attacker just follows this trail of breadcrumbs you've left behind to map out their entire plan. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We rely on this massive digital world every single day, but how much of it is truly private? And how much of it is just waiting to be discovered by anyone who's curious enough to look?